Well, today we are wrapping up the series that we've been doing. In July, we've been working with an essay, actually an excerpt from an essay by Ralph Waldo Emerson that's called The Oversoul. Emerson and Unity co-founder Charles Fillmore were kindred spirits. I once referred to them as spirits in rebellion. They were rebelling. They wanted to get away from religion as usual and empower each of us as individuals. That was the rebellion, to empower each of us as individuals to take responsibility for our own spiritual growth. Traditional religion, back in those days, the early and mid-1800s, traditional religions insisted that spiritual and philosophical truth could only be found in tradition, or it had to come from some human authority figure, or from some special revelation, or from scripture and things like that. And Emerson and Fillmore said, cut out the middleman. Cut out the middleman, get rid of the appeals to authority, and make sure that the ideas that you want to teach can stand on their own merit so that each person can decide for themselves. A few weeks ago, I shared something that Charles Fillmore wrote, something that appears in almost all of the books that he wrote and the preface to his books. He said that our objective is to discern the truth and prove it. The truth that we teach is not new, neither do we claim special revelations or discovery of new spiritual principles. You have to be able to prove it. If it's true, you need to be able to prove it. And for both Fillmore and Emerson, truth, that elusive word truth, was something that was found primarily in the realm of ideas. The true, the good, the beautiful could be found by turning within and using our human faculties of pure reason and intuition to contemplate those things and to find them. Now they make it sound like some sort of a purely subjective exercise. But what they believed and what they found through their experience was that people having this inner subjective experience had a tendency to come to the same conclusions on these things, that it was a shared common experience that could be reached through intuition and reason. That's what Emerson meant in the opening lines of The Oversoul. And I want to share these lines with you just for a few moments, and just take a few moments to listen to these words carefully. Emerson says that the supreme critic on the errors of the past and the present, and the only prophet of that which must be, is that great nature in which we rest, as the earth lies in the soft arms of the atmosphere. That unity, that oversoul, within which every man's particular being is contained and made one with all other. In other words, you are the supreme critic. You are the supreme critic when it comes to assessing your own life's experience. You are the supreme critic when it comes to assessing your life. You're the only one who gets to decide what the rest of your life is going to look like. Not in terms of what's going to happen, because that's largely out of our control, but in terms of how we choose to live life, how we go about finding meaning and purpose in life. We're the ones that get to do that. Charles Fillmore would call that process a metaphysical journey into the realm of divine ideas. What he meant by that was that it wasn't something that could be imposed on us from the outside. Indeed, both Emerson and Fillmore were deeply suspicious. If you read a lot of Fillmore and Emerson, you'll see that they're deeply suspicious of any information that comes to us from the outside through the senses, through the five senses, or however many senses you think that we have. As it turned out, we've already seen they didn't really trust religion. Well, they really didn't trust science either, believe it or not. They didn't believe that we could learn anything about ultimate reality by studying the physical world around us. That was their bias or their prejudice. They thought that the physical world was somehow less real than the realm of ideas. And here's where I get to be a heretic. They were both wrong. They were both wrong on that count, because it turns out that the greatest human achievements of the past 100 years or so come from our dedicated and persistent observation of the physical world around us. Repeated observation and experimentation combined with our human faculties of reason and intuition have proved to be far more beneficial to human thriving than reason and intuition alone. Which brings us to our word for today, metaphysics. You don't have to be around Unity very long before you hear the word metaphysics being thrown around, and in my humble opinion, I don't think we do a very good job of defining it or talking about it in any detail. We need to do that. This is a word that's been around now for over 2,300 years. It comes to us from ancient Greece, and it's been through at least 3 major revisions in terms of how it's defined. For example, at one time, metaphysics would include within it theology. Theology is now its own separate field within philosophy, so there's been lots of major revisions, but we can come up, for starters, with a simple but incomplete definition of metaphysics by simply splitting it in two, like this. Split it in two. The Greek prefix meta means after or before. Physics is the study of matter and energy, so we get a crude definition. Metaphysics means beyond the study of the material or the physical. All right, that's a good starting place. In philosophy, we can take it to another level. In philosophy, there's another definition. Metaphysics is the study of being, first causes, what is real, and that which does not change. And that's changing a little bit within the field of philosophy, but that's a pretty good current definition of it. First causes, what is real, that which does not change, and being. Now we can look at it from another perspective. We can look at metaphysics from the pop culture perspective, which it takes it to a whole different place. Go to a metaphysical bookstore sometime. You won't find philosophy books. You're going to find astrology, tarot cards, palm reading, UFOs, psychics, channelers, and all this kind of stuff, which eventually leads to stuff like this. You go from there to this next one, where we conclude, based on metaphysics, that quantum mechanics is weird and consciousness is weird. Therefore, anything is possible, and your thoughts control the universe, quantum. Now, buy my book and learn how to get whatever you want without doing a thing. That, my friends, is the sad state of affairs when the word metaphysics is used in our pop culture, which is why I cringe when I hear the word metaphysics applied to Unity, because for more and more people, it lumps us in with that kind of New Age, occult, pseudoscientific stuff, which is not accurate or useful and is ultimately damaging to our reputation, and I dare say our future as a movement. Okay, I'm off the soapbox now, but if we're going to keep using the word metaphysics in Unity, we have to make sure that we use it carefully, that we define it whenever we use it. Because from a purely philosophical definition, from a purely philosophical standpoint, which I shared with you, we are engaged in the study of metaphysics. We're interested in the nature of being. What does it mean to be human? We're interested in the nature of consciousness, perhaps as an emergent property of matter, but whatever it is, we're studying it. We're interested in finding out what might be eternal and unchanging. And the truth is, we haven't found it yet. That's why I like that song that John shared with us earlier. We're diving in. We're going deeper. We're getting closer, right? We're working on it. We're learning. And that's what the journey's all, Spirit's journey. There was another song that we sang this morning. There's that idea of this journey, this process, going deeper. We're not afraid to jump into the deep end in unity. And so we're working on it. We're working on it. We're learning how to use all of the faculties and tools at our disposal. Things like intuition and observation, theories and experiments, the physical realm of matter and energy, and the non-physical realm of ideas and reason. All the tools that we use. We need it all. And to say that we are strictly metaphysical is inaccurate and limiting. We need to go beyond that. About a week and a half ago, you might recall that this happened. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
The New Horizons space probe. We sent an unmanned probe to Pluto, which sent back these photographs from a distance of 5 billion kilometers from the Earth. It's a long way. It took 10 years to get there, had to swing around Jupiter to pick up enough speed to finish the trip. Any space nerds out there like me? I mean, I was in space nerd heaven to see these pictures coming back. And of course, the first day the pictures come back and they say, yeah, they're only going to get better tomorrow. And it's like, oh yeah, you know, can't wait to see this. Amazing, amazing things. They say that the transmitter on that little space probe at its most powerful, when they have it turned up all the way, has the same power as a 200-watt light bulb. Wow. That's what's transmitting those signals back to the Earth. 5 billion kilometers, and we can pick that up. We can pull that out of the cosmic background noise and turn it into these kind of pictures. That's pretty darn impressive and amazing. And as 10 years through space, 5 billion kilometers, and it winds up exactly right where the scientists wanted it. That's amazing. Carl Sagan once said, "Science delivers the goods." Isn't that the truth? All right. But there are some who do not share my enthusiasm. Can you believe such a thing? There are some who say, whoop-de-doo, big deal. Pictures of a barren rock. What a colossal waste of time and energy and money. The money could have been spent to fight poverty, to fund cancer research, you name it, anything but space exploration. I hear that, and what I hear is lack thinking, lack consciousness. Like we can't do all of these things, or if we choose to do one, it means that we can't do the others? Says who? Baloney. And this is where real metaphysics comes into play. Real metaphysics causes us to ask some important questions. Things like, what is there about this kind of discovery, and what is there about the activity of exploration and learning that provides something of value beyond the physical activity and beyond the physical observations that are made? That's a metaphysical question. What is it that drives us to do this kind of thing in the first place? And what might we learn about our place in the grand scheme of things from this? Those are metaphysical questions. History and experience have clearly shown us that acquiring knowledge for the sake of knowing things about our universe is good in and of itself. You might say it's beautiful too when you look at those pictures. Did you notice the heart people were remarking about? Can you get that last one up there, Russ? The one of Pluto? Showing a heart. That's okay. You saw. There it is. See, they say that looks like a heart down there. And of course, everybody's wondering exactly what that is now, and they're waiting for more data to come in so they can look and maybe figure out what's going on there. But, you know, it's good in and of itself. It's beautiful, and the world gets to share in this. As human beings, we want to explore our universe. We want to discover new things just because we're curious. And curiosity, that's also a good thing in and of itself. A true metaphysician should be a cheerleader for these things. A true metaphysician should be a cheerleader for these things, affirming abundance and then rejoicing in the things that come from human knowledge and discovery, things that go beyond what might simply add to the bottom line. So getting back to Emerson and Fillmore for a moment. I think the main reason they were so suspicious of the material world and the senses is because science and the academic world back in their day insisted that the only things that were real and worth studying were material, physical, and sensory. That was an extreme position, which was popular. It was pervasive at the time. And what happens so often in response to an extreme position is an extreme but opposite reaction, which is what we see in the writings of Emerson and Fillmore. I think something like this needs to happen from time to time. We need to go to the opposite extremes in order to stake out the middle ground, which is where the real productive stuff happens. So that's why you'll never hear me claim to be a metaphysician. I won't use that term. That's one extreme, and it's too limiting. And I'll also never claim to be a physicalist, because that's the opposite extreme, just as limiting. I prefer the term realist. I dwell in reality, which consists of physical things like rocks and tacos. Gotta get that in there. And it also consists of non-physical things like ideas and principles. The thing I think we're all curious about is just exactly what ties it all together and makes it go. If we had a better understanding of what that is, something we could agree on, do you think that we might get along a little bit better here on planet Earth? It's a conversation worth having. But if we approach the question from a purely metaphysical perspective, we often end up with gods and goddesses and demons and spirits. And how often have human beings in history agreed on whose gods and goddesses should reign supreme? That's been a source of dissension and warfare throughout human history. However, if we approach the question from a purely physical perspective, then we lose sight of what it means to be human. We can lose the pure joy of imagination. We can tend to devalue the intangible things in life that can be so beneficial to human thriving. Things like love, compassion, altruism. Think of any word that you use to describe a value. You're in the realm of metaphysics. We don't want to lose that either. If we're not working with both the physical and the metaphysical, we're limiting ourselves. It's like we have two different tools in our tool chest, right? Physical and metaphysical tools. And the real skill that we need to learn is which one to use in which situation. And I would say if we're not working with both physical and metaphysical, we have no business calling our movement unity, because we're not uniting things at that point. We're dividing. We need to use it all. So for example, if I wake up in the morning and I wonder if I'm going to need a raincoat before I head out the door, what do? Do I turn within, trust my imagination and intuition and head out the door? No, seems to me a better course of action would be to get up and look out the window, right? Stick your head out the door, see if it's raining, see what's going on in the physical world, make that observation. And if I'm facing an ethical dilemma, a crisis of values, trying to figure out what words and what actions are going to bring about the greatest good in a situation, is there any kind of thermometer, barometer, telescope, or microscope that's going to tell me what to do? That's where I'm going to work with reason, with imagination, with intuition. I'm going to take that inner journey. And then, whatever course of action I end up taking, I'm going to observe how it works. How does that play out in the real world? Was it a good result? Was it a bad result? Either way, we add that knowledge back into our experience, which is what helps us to go forward as more complete and compassionate human beings. We need it all. It isn't just physics. It isn't just metaphysics. We need to work with both, using practical reality as a touchstone. So I want to close today with a quote from an article that I was reading about the New Horizons Pluto mission. It was written by Stephen Novella. I don't know if any of you are familiar with him. Stephen Novella is a scientist whose work that I've been following for a few years now. Here's what he has to say on the subject. There he is, and here's his quote. He says, "We cannot always foresee how basic scientific knowledge will translate into a concrete benefit. But that is part of the point. We don't know. We find stuff out because it is empowering. It is better to know. Knowledge has a way of cascading, leading to more knowledge, greater insight, seeing patterns in the fabric of reality we had not considered. Knowledge is beneficial for its own sake, even if one bit of knowledge is not itself directly useful. The indirect benefits are incalculable." So we go from the time of Emerson and Fillmore to the present day when scientists are talking like this, and that is a wonderful combination of the physical and the metaphysical, valuing both of those and giving us an idea of what it is that we can gain from that, call it a marriage of those two things. From Emerson and Fillmore to the present day, that's how it can all work together. So the message here is, let's not get stuck in the past, and let's not get stuck in the extremes. See you next week.